Yep. So this is the Real Education Project. It is a schools project started in conjunction with Shakespeare, the Tackle Company, and the Angling Trust. It was born out of an idea between Richard Hadley and a few other people within the participation team to how we can take the concept of angling, the activities that are involved, into primary schools. Can I have the next slide, please, Alex? So we have myself and Chris has taken on one of our very first schools last year. So a little bit of background on both of us. I have been involved in youth and schools work for the last nearly 20 years now, up in Scotland and now down in the south of England. I've been a youth worker, I've been a schools chaplain, and I've been involved in and around education for the last kind of like say 15, 20 years. I got back into angling in lockdown. Like a lot of people, I went as a kid in Scotland from time to time and really enjoyed it. We had a caravan on the west coast of Scotland, so used to do a lot of sea spinning and mackerel fishing. And in lockdown, found out it was one of the only things that we were allowed to do. So I had a rod in the back of the shed, went out with a friend. Where I live in Bristol, we have the Froome running through a park near us, which is free to fish, and got back into it in a big way. Discovered that the Angling Trust, after the first lockdown, was doing the Get Fishing funding. And I applied for my school that I work in as a youth worker, and we got the funding. I made contacts in the Angling Trust, and during that time, one of my jobs, I had 2.5 jobs. One of them, where I worked for the Church of England for 14 years, I was made redundant, and then the role came along at exactly the right time to fill the amount of hours I needed, and it's been a real great opportunity to learn some new skills and to stay alongside education. Chris's background is he's been an avid carp angler for years, loves a bit of all kinds of fishing, but has been a big carp angler. He used to run his own audio business and ran audio on cruise ships, but for the last few years he had worked for BT as a project manager until, similar to me, he was made redundant. Found out about this role and wanted to kind of see if he could pursue a career in and alongside angling in any way. So both our skills in education and project management have come into a real good thing to make this project go off so well so far. So can I have the next slide there, please, Chris? Please, Alex, sorry. So what is real education? I don't want to just read through all the slides. The bullet points are there, but it is creating a real interest in kids, in rivers, lakes and seas, the marine life that is in them, the importance of them, why they're so valuable, and also as equally as important, an interest in angling. The one thing I used to be shocked about, but not anymore, is in all the schools that we've been to across the country, whether up north, whether down in Somerset, whether in the Midlands, is the amount of kids, when you say in every class, who's actually ever been fishing? And the amount of hands that go up, easily 10 each time. And it's whether they've been with an uncle or a granddad or a neighbour, friend of the family. They've all, someone they can sort of go, well, I think I went on a lake or I went on a pond. And then you say, well, who's actually ever been crabbing? And loads of hands go up. So they do have an awareness, more than we probably realise. The actual project itself is delivered by licensed angling coaches in sort of PE style angling games. I've had a few coaches that have kind of said to me, I don't see how this project will work. And then they see us deliver it and they go, do you know what? I get it now. It's like any other like any other sport, like football, netball, rugby, can be delivered and they can learn a lot about it in a 45 to an hour long PE lesson. And the same way we do with our project here is that they learn how to cast, they learn how to safely land and net a fish, they learn the importance of bait, they learn maybe a little bit about our experiences in angling, and it genuinely gets them really excited about that. And what I love about the sport of angling is that every coach has got a different take on why they love it or the fishing they do. I love my course fishing. I love, standing next to just a little river or a big river somewhere and seeing whatever's inside. Well, when you hear the carp anglers talking about the casting and the strength and all those kind of core skills as well that they use. And then the secondary element of the project is the in-class delivery. So we have produced curriculum-based activities that was created by teachers and delivered by the staff in the school pre-made lessons in science, maths and art. They are all differentiated for Key Stage 1, which is kind of reception to age 4 to age 7. And then Key Stage 2, which is 7 to 11, on maths, art and science, all themed around the marine life, themed around conservation, themed around fish, themed around water, to kind of build on that concept of why our rivers, lakes and seas are important and exciting. The project is corporately sponsored by Shakespeare, which, I'll be honest, when you're in schools can be slightly confusing because they instantly think of the wordsmith. And it's delivered using Shakespeare kit as well. So you do have that kind of classic blue seat box involved, and Shakespeare kit for all the equipment. And that is linked alongside the new Angling Trusting Shakespeare range that's being sold in Go Outdoors. And this is probably the most important bit, one that's almost the biggest struggle as well, is then going on to develop local links to angling and providing exit routes where children can actually go from the classroom to the bank, to actually get a rod into their hands, a whip into their hands, and how they engage and hopefully make it into a lifelong habit. And that is the point where it's probably the most important part, but is the biggest challenge for how we do. It is completely free to the school, completely free. We are fully funded for the next kind of, I think, 6 months to 18 months at the moment. It's ongoing discussions about the length of the project. And we are developing at the moment an environmental and a mindfulness module, which we want to deliver into secondary schools to expand the reach of the project and to allow us to reach a wider audience. And from a clinical point of view as well, secondary schools mean children with more disposable income, children that actually need to apply for a rod license. So that kind of helps us track that data a lot more about who's getting involved. Can I have next slide, please, Alex? So what have we done so far? So the project was officially formed in February 2022. I started Chris and I were both interviewed in the January of last year. I started in the February, Chris started in the March. The creation of the project had happened, I think, from the previous year. So all the classroom materials were made up then, and Chris and I were basically starting the project from scratch from the beginning. We completed pilots in Bristol, where I'm based, in just south of Birmingham, and in Manchester in our first few months. We were very, very pleased how quickly we managed to gain some traction. I've got 3 kids, so I was quite lucky that my kids' head was really on board with us coming in to pilot the project. And within the first few months, we had gone through all the different year groups to test it out. We had delivered from reception through to year 6. And I think in our first 2 terms of really running the project properly, we'd got around, I think, close to 5,000 kids, which was fantastic. And then we heard anecdotally of kids then attending get fishing events, and even having some pictures of them getting involved. Our official media launch, and this is where the project was kept quite quiet, frustratingly for us in one sense, our launch was in March this year. This was linked to the Shakespeare and Go Outdoors collaboration of the kit with the Angling Trust. At Shakespeare, we're putting up nearly 50% of the money for the project. But since then, Chris and I worked out our numbers today. We've had over 50 schools have taken part in the project, between the north and the south, with nearly 20,000 children having taken part in the project across the country. We had 1 week, a couple of weeks ago, when we worked out that 2,500 kids were taking part, and that was because of a great project through Peterborough that John Pope, who I've noticed on the call, was running, which is fantastic. I was involved in a schools fair day for a couple of days in Reading, where we had loads of kids come through and find out about different elements of the sport, as well as up in the north. There was a few special fairs on where we were really able to promote the project really, really heavily. We've got over 10 coaches now delivering across England, across our areas, and we are looking to get more. We'll talk a little bit more about the coaches later on. And we fantastically were able to deliver our first real education fishing match from 8 schools that were involved in the project up in Manchester, and they got involved, and they're looking to build on this next year to get more opportunities. There's one school I'm working with in Bath who happen to have a canal 2 minutes from their school gates, and hopefully we'll be running some fishing sessions with a few of their kids that got involved in the project as a really clear exit strategy and a way to get involved in that. Can I have the next slide, please, Alex? So how can schools get involved? Key thing is they can contact myself or Chris on the Real Education website. If you just Google now Real Education, and being as much as we love our puns, it's REEL, and it will take us straight to the website where you can contact us. They can see examples of what's going on. They can see testimonies from teachers. Local coaches are now really taking it upon themselves to promote events, as it is a really good way for some coaches earning some income during the day. Again, we'll speak about that a little bit more in a minute. We have plenty of space for the 2023-2024 school year. Or they can speak to other angling trust staff. We're getting referrals now through participation officers. We're getting referrals through the environmental team where there's been links there. And it's a really, the amount of contact we're getting from different places. We've been in the Angling Times. We were on TalkSport talking about the project. We've had the videos that have gone on through the Shakespeare website as well. So there's a myriad of ways that the project is getting out there. And we just want to improve that. We're now going to be a regular part of Angling Trust's communication on Fridays, to keep an eye out for that there as well. Can I have the next slide, please, Alex? So how can coaches get involved? Contact either myself or Chris, or also if you're a coach, I'm sure you'll know of Richard Hadley or Angela in the coaching centre. Drop them an email, they'll push us through to that. We have a very small application form, which is not a job interview. It's more just for us to understand a bit about your background, about your skills and experiences, and help us to basically track who's getting involved in which area. You must be a minimum level 1 angling coach for delivery. If it's something that you are very keen on, it's something we can work through about helping people to get their level 1. But we have a slight proviso at the moment. If you are a sports coach already, or have a teaching qualification and being a primary school or secondary school teacher, and you would like to work towards getting your angling coach as well, we would love to have you on board. As many people know that, you can be the best angling coach in the world, but if you don't know how to inspire a kid to be interested in what's going on, it makes that barrier so much different. So if you've got a real passion for working with children and young people, and would like to get to that stage to be going into schools, contacting local schools, councils, education authorities, letting them know about the project, because this project is free. And as someone who's worked in schools for years, schools love free projects. They love something that's going to inspire a kid in a different way. They love something that's going to take the kids off their hands, really, for a couple of hours as well, cynically. But also anything that's going to encourage them to get out of the house. I saw the effect of kids in lockdown. I was doing home visits to kids that we weren't seeing after lockdown, because they got so sucked into school. And through my project and my other job, I took a group of kids with autistic spectrum conditions, and they'd been stuck inside for the whole time. We were sat out by a river in the rain, and one of them went to the other one, "Do you know what? It's really nice to be outside today." And we didn't catch a thing that day, but it really started that process for them of being willing to go outside, to enjoy being outside, and to consider that further. The next stage is, so it is flexible working available. So some coaches will go in 9 to 3 over the course of a week. Some will maybe do a day a week. Some will maybe have a batch in a school where they'll be busy for a few weeks and it'll quieten down. We want to obviously have as many schools as possible. We have the day rate at the moment is £95 per day. That is working out from roughly 6.5 hours work, so sort of 8:45 to 3:15. Which we think is quite reasonable for that time. Sort of our expectations for coaches are, being professional, being engaging, bringing the joy that we get from angling and the experience of that into the school, and being able to get kids excited whichever way. I mean, the one thing that seems to get kids the most excited is a little pot of maggots, explaining how we use them, why we use them. All our kit and clothing is provided. We are just in the process of ordering some new kit, as we've basically given all of ours out recently. And we are on the process of ordering a whole set of new clothing as well. So we are hoping to get some more coaches involved, so we will have clothing and everything ready for them to go. And I think one of the best things that's come out of this from my end is actually seeing the coaches creating these extra links and these extra knowledges, which is fantastic within their community. Because I think we all know that no matter how many people we know go fishing and enjoy it, whether it's on the sea and on a river, on a lake, there's still that bit of kind of trying to think what the right word of is bemusement at people that go angling, no matter how many people, even though it's obviously much more in the public consciousness now through things that are on television, through kind of visual influence and things like that. But we are still viewed as a little bit odd, if we're very honest. So seeing the coaches be able to make that bridge into the school, be able to talk about the benefits to them, to talk about the benefits to their mental health, to their well-being, to appreciating nature. I think there was one coach who, I think it was John Pope, who said, we're trying to get you off the Xbox and onto the seat box. And that was a lovely little kind of line to get the kids excited. And the thing that is, I mean, if you're any of your coaches here, you have coached boys and girls in angling, the girls are always better than the boys. Like I was at a school in Gloucester on Monday, and most of the girls, we do underarm casting into a bucket is one of the games. You'll see some images in a second, and the girls were getting it straight away, and then they were teaching each other, and that was amazing to see. No, this bit of metal, you've got to hold the line first, then you open the bail arm. And it was brilliant. And then at the end of each lesson, it's who would be interested in going fishing, and I would say 90% of the hands go up. So then it's our real responsibility then is to make sure that we're trying to create events in these locations, opportunities and knowledge about how to do so. You're going to hear now from Andy a little bit about, because he's recently come on board, getting involved in the project. So I will mute myself, probably sick of my Scottish tones now, and I'll hand you on to Andy.
Okay. Just trying to get the video back on again. Can everybody see me? Yeah. Okay, so I've done lots of different angling coaching with adults and kids. I've done a lot of get fishing events, and as I've said, a lot of events with tackling mines, both with kids and adults. I was kind of curious to how this would work in the schools. I've certainly perfected my fish impression in the warm-ups, which has been quite fun. The casting, totally agree with Neil. It's great to see the kids helping each other with the casting. Definitely the girls are a lot more accurate with the casting. I think the teachers have been really engaged as well. We've had quite a lot of the teachers joining in, helping, doing the casting, and quite a few of the teachers have actually said that they want to start fishing as well as the kids when we've asked them at the end of the sessions. I think it's great to see how enthusiastic the kids are about the environmental side of things, learning the kids about the different fish and where they live. Certainly, I think one memorable moment for me is there was a young lad who suffered quite badly from disabilities, and he actually approached me as the kids were leaving at the end of the session and said, "Andy, that was brilliant. It's the best lesson I've had at school in ages. Bless him." So the kids are really, really, excited by this, and the majority of them are really excited to try fishing for, real fish, not magnetic fish, or doing the casting. Once the sessions are finished, and I'm sure a lot of them will ask for parents and attend the Get Fishing events. Is there anything else you want me to talk about?
So obviously you had 30 kids at a time. it is kind of an organised sense of chaos. What was your first impression of the first kind of session that you ran?
First impressions were, I've been doing my sessions in conjunction with Neil Thompson from Topcast Angling Manchester. So Neil had done a few sessions before me. So the first session, I kind of watched what Neil was doing and kind of followed suit. I think as a first impression, I thought it was brilliant. I've actually, since doing this, I'm actually considering whether I want to go into education myself, because I found it kind of really rewarding doing this in the schools. And I'd certainly recommend it to any angling coach with a trust to try doing these sessions. I think as well, I think it's very different to doing an angling session at a lake or a river, but I've really enjoyed it, and I think one of the things that's kind of made me laugh and make me enjoy it is, the kids are real little characters, and one of the questions we get asked a lot is whether, when we turn up with the buckets for the casting activity, whether or not they have real fish in them. Which is quite funny. Yeah, overall, I've really enjoyed it, and as I said, I would recommend it to any angling trust coach.
That's great. Thanks very much, Andy. If you just stop your screen there, and then I can go into the final screen. Thanks, Alex. So in some schools, we really try and encourage them to get involved to promote the project here. And in these tweets here, you can see some of our Real Education UK. We haven't set up an Instagram yet because, if I'm honest, schools mostly use Twitter more than anything to promote the work they do. So we'll try and get some schools will get really involved in a competition for the best fish puns in their classes if they use Twitter, and it allows us to kind of raise the profile of the project as well. So you can see there some of the jokes that are taken there, and I'm sure we've all heard some of those crackers over the year. And also it brings along more brand awareness and for Shakespeare and the Angling Trust as well. Can I have the next slide, please, Alex? So this is an example of some of the games going on here. So that's kind of the magnet fishing that we were talking about, and each coach has done it a little bit differently. I prefer to use a landing net pole for the fishing rather than a whip. We have recently just taken stock of 120 new gabby fish, which Chris and I will spend our evenings now punching little metal eyelets into the hole of them, because it's a much more effective magnet way to attach them there. And you'll see there, this is how we explain about fishing, about the kind of catching, the landing, getting to explain why you don't lift a fish up into the air on the hook, explaining, and there's some really good kind of little bits that even I've learned about that, because I knew I was never supposed to lift a fish out of the water until someone explained it to me. That's basically because the water is supporting the fish's weight the entire time, the same way that it does for us in the swimming pool. Can I have the next slide, please, Alex? Here we go. This again, a kind of a mix of everything. We've got one of our coaches there to kind of explain a bit about the fish, a bit about the scales, and down the bottom here on the right, that's usually when we're explaining about the project. I bring in a pot of smelly pineapple pop-ups to give the kids a chance to smell it, and it always makes for a great reaction photo of the kids kind of bulking at the smell. We do have to be careful, if you want to do something similar to that, about bringing in some boilies or smelly baits, because a lot of them are either flavored with shellfish as a base, which obviously are high allergen. So we have to be very careful on that front as well. And there's some the top right of those pictures. That's us doing some of the games where we were called the salmon ladder, where kids had to swim against the current of their classmates walking around in a circle. And at the bottom there was just some of our kind of our easier activities, which is using a baiting game and explaining why we bait in specific areas, why we would, what kind of bait we would use. Next slide, please, Alex. And here's some kids doing some casting. The Shakespeare Catch a Monster rods, while for most anglers you would not think, most anglers, whenever we see sort of starter rod kits, we think, well, that's going to break in about 5 minutes. And these rods have been, for me at least, have been absolute workhorses. Apart from tangles, I've not had a problem. I've not lost an eyelet. I've not lost a reel. I've not had any breakages. I think we've had a couple of breakages in transit, but beyond that, we have been very, very pleased with how some of these kind of models of equipment have gone. And sometimes we'll do underarm cast into a bucket, depending on the group as well. You can look at doing the longest cast, but that tends to lead to more tangles. Next slide, please, Alex. And here we go. That's some more of the, I think that's someone undoing the magnet tangle there. That's just, again, catching and landing the fish, explaining why you would put them into a keep net, depending on where you were fishing. And we also, in some cases, we've got rubbish that we've magnetized. So they have to fish the rubbish out before they can try and catch some fish. Next slide, please. There we go, some of our kids with their catches. That's up in Manchester. Next slide, please. This is me giving a basic instruction about how to do some casting. This is down in the deepest, darkest Somerset. And where there's a little bucket in the background and explain about accuracy. And again, this is the activity that girls are always best at. And some might say it's because they can think about doing two things at once. I genuinely had and if you can see on the end of the rod there, we just use a small squash ball for the weight. I genuinely had a child once when I got them set up, was explaining how to cast. And I said, so when I'm explaining about letting go of your finger off of the line when you're ready, so we do 1, 2, 3, and then when I said, right, now let go, the child threw the whole rod across the playground. And thankfully no one was injured, neither was the rod, but it really helped me kind of think about the language that I used when I was explaining it to them. Instead of letting go, just let your finger go. Next photo, please. And here's some examples of some of the kids trying it out there. Next picture. And again, there's Dean Aspler in the background, who's the South Regional I always get his role wrong, but there you go. There's a child landing some rubbish, and it's again an opportunity to explain about the levels of plastic in the rivers, lakes, and seas. I was fishing out a small fishery a little while ago, and I still came out with a little bit of plastic on my hook. So we can explain to the kids that it is everywhere and how it's our responsibility if we're going to get involved in angling to look after it. Next picture, please, Alex. There you go, doing some of the baiting games there, which is more about hand-to-eye coordination. I've recently introduced massive 3-person catapults to launch the bait for a reasonable distance. Certainly for the older students, it's a lot more engaging, a lot more fun, and it allows us to explain why we would bait a specific area, what you're trying to avoid under the water, what you're trying to avoid over the water. Next slide, please, Alex. And that's one of our final group shots from I think this is one of our first pilot school in the north. And the amazing thing is, if you've done any Get Fishing events, you may have seen a lot of these Shakespeare caps. I still see kids from schools in and around Bristol, in and around Gloucester, wearing these hats. From my son's school, in the mornings, I'll still see the hats being worn. And it's a fantastic kind of little reminder to the schools of the work that's been done there. I think that might be our last photo. Is it there, Alex? Yes, now we're on to any questions. So willing to take any questions that are written down here.